Hello and welcome back to the Game Room. You know what I love? Video games. You know what I love talking about? Games. And it seems like a lot of people these days who cover games seem to hate them. Or at least the people who play them. Well, that's not me, and that's not the 1,556 of you beautiful people checking out this video right now. Now, one of the things I've always been interested in are hacks and homebrews for all different types of consoles, but definitely the NES. I've been covering homebrews and hacks of NES games since I started the channel, and I thought, why not do a video where we go over a bunch of the games I've covered, but also a bunch of the games I have that I haven't even talked about. A few of these I've even opened up just for this video. There's a lot of games out there, some of which you've never even heard of. That's where I come in. My name's Luke. I've been playing games since the age of 2, and I have no life.
This is my game room.
Alright, let's start off with one that I talked about pretty recently. It is a 4-player simultaneous game for the NES, and the people who made this were super nice. Even when the game wasn't working on my console, they even sent me a replacement board that did work, and that is the Micro Mages game that I thoroughly enjoyed. I played this with my little brother when I originally captured the footage for it. We played all the way through it. Had some issues with the sound, but if you're playing it on an old school NES or anything like that, it is pretty seamless. You control one of the little Micro Mages and you go through levels that traverse vertically, and it has a little bit of a Super Meat Boy vibe as far as the fact that you die very easily, but you can, if you're playing especially on 2 players, you can revive your buddy, or if you unlock another thing, you can get a life back, or you can pick up an item that allows you to take a hit. And the movement is just phenomenal on this. Like, this is one of the things that's really cool about the homebrew scene, especially for the NES, is nowadays they're able to do things because they can, buy the chipsets and you don't have to worry about it, and they make these new mappers and it's not as expensive. But there's things that you can do with the NES that I never even dreamed possible, and a game like this is a good example of that. Now, you don't have to just play it on the NES. I don't even know if you can pick it up on the NES anymore. It is available on Steam and I think on other consoles too. Really simple game design, but something that has you coming back for more, and one that I can definitely see being a party favorite, pick up and play, and very, very solid title, so you should check it out. Now, I mentioned it briefly last time. I'm just going to run past this one, but yes, The Legend of Link, one of the most impressive hacks I've ever seen. Something I didn't even mention in the last video is that instead of in the original Zelda, you only stab forward. In this one, they corrected it so that you slash outward like you do in Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, basically every other Zelda game except for the first one. And just impressive what they were able to do on the NES with this, but once again, just download the ROM. You don't want to, or else get someone else who can make it without destroying a actual cart of a rare game. Now, here's one that was super interesting. I have yet to play it with people. I have opened it, and for this was actually the first time I plugged it in, and I didn't plug in my zapper because I didn't feel like digging it out, and that is Super Russian Roulette. And this is a fun game. It's basically Russian roulette. If you know what that is, you put a bullet in the chamber and then everyone pulls the trigger until the lucky person gets checked out. And the way this game works is you can have a computer player and then up to 3 human players, but the computer player basically eggs you on. Sometimes they'll give you a funny nickname, and you can even piss him off. And if you piss him off, which is what happened with all my characters because I didn't have the zapper plugged in, it only allows you to rotate the chamber with the regular controller, whereas the zapper, you need to pull the trigger on it for it to say if it's going to go off or not. So if you just continue to move the chamber, the cowboy eventually gets pissed and kills you. And so that's what happened to me in all my playthroughs. But it's just a random fun party game, not a ton of content to it. You can change the way the cowboy looks, different mustaches and things like that. This is a very collectible thing now, from what I've seen. It was like a couple $100 from what I saw. And I can only imagine there's one that comes in a holster and all these other things, but it's definitely quaint and enjoyable, and just a fun thing to have where you can use the zapper with the NES or any of the modern clone systems and use it, even though, because you don't have to point it at the TV, you point it at yourself. So it is one of the rare things that will work on a modern TV because it's not actually going on the TV. Okay, moving to one of the hacks I got. So this was from Flashback Entertainment, which was one of my favorite repro sites back in the day. Apparently they're not around anymore. I wasn't aware of that. And I'm a huge fan of Friday the 13th. I'm a huge fan of Nightmare on Elm Street. And I saw a hack called Freddy vs. Jason. Around this time, I think I had just covered Friday the 13th with the Hated Gems. And I was thinking maybe this corrects how bad that plays. Popping it in today, it pretty much is just playing through the NES version of Friday the 13th, but instead of playing as counselors, you start as Freddy. And you start off with, instead of a rock that never hits anything, you start off with a scythe hand. But I got into the area, and it's just as confusing when you walk around. I mean, I think they improved it a little bit. And then items will randomly just appear on the screen. I don't remember that happening without you killing stuff in the original, or the actual game. So I got the knife, and I found a key, and I found a lighter. But then getting into the fight with Jason, I couldn't remember how to dodge, or if you can dodge. And you do have the same amount of different versions of Freddy, so you can still do that as you were doing with the counselors. But they're all Freddy, and then when Freddy dies, yeah, it just, I mean, it's, I don't know, it's basically the same game. Am I regretting having it compared to some of the other games I could have bought at the time? Yeah, I'd rather have something a little bit more tangible than this, but still, it's decent enough, and maybe something fun to play through on Halloween. And then the other game I got from Flashback Entertainment was unfortunately a mistake. So I love The Legend of Zelda 2, Adventures of Link, and there's allegedly some hacks of the game. There's Legend of Zelda, The Adventure of Link Part 2, and then The Adventure of Link Part 3. So I thought I had bought Part 2, but when it showed up, it was Part 3. And when I looked at my order back then, it was Part 3. And I always thought, okay, you know, I'll play this someday, but I want to wait to do Part 2. Not that it matters. I'm sure it's just an arranged mode that changes things up. But I just never got around to doing it. So I popped it in today, and it was immediately exciting for me. As someone who loves Zelda 2, this was really, really cool to pop in and see what it was like. Already, you start in the same castle, but then you exit it, and the map's completely different. Now, you only have 1 bar of health and 1 bar of magic, and I managed to get to a town, and the town tells me that I have to go north and find the candle, and yet again, I have a feeling it's going to suffer from the problem that I always talk about. Same thing that happened with Parallel Worlds, is that people, when they do these, they make them so incredibly hard that unless you're a downright masochist for the series, it can be very hard to get into it. And I am pretty damn close to being that way with Zelda 2, because popping it in, I was immediately like, man, I should sit down and play this. This actually really appeals to me. And then I got into a random battle and saw that I was killed by one of the enemies in 1 hit. And when I found the bubbles, I got half my health taken. And that's what I didn't even realize I only had 1 bar of health until I got into that screen. And the fact that I couldn't figure anything out or find anything, like I saw a temple in the distance. I saw an area with a cave. I'm guessing you got to go through that cave, even though I went north and then south, and the NPCs told me to only go north. But I can live with it, but for most people out there, you're probably not going to want to put up with the level of difficulty that I'm guessing this has. But hey, something that I'm interested in checking out, and a hack of a game that, you know, you love it or hate it. I happen to love it, and I'd like to check it out. All right, now here is one of the first hacks I ever bought. So when I first started kind of researching, getting into all this collecting, I became a huge fan of the Metal Jesus channel. I found all the hidden gems. That was the guy who led me to Game Chasers, led me to almost every other retro person I followed at the time, reacquainted me with Angry Video Game Nerd. I'd seen the Turtles video in college. I had no idea it was a series, and then finding out, oh my god, I could have been watching this all along, was definitely a little eye-opening. But there was a hack of an NES game that John Riggs, of all people, introduced on the channel when they were doing, I think they were doing a hacks video. And what's funny is that this was around when Riggs only had 500 subs, I think. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, is there any way I can get a copy of that hack? Because it looked interesting, and that's the Metal Jesus World Tour. And I don't think he made this particular hack. He does a lot of hacks, but I don't think he did this one. But he did make the cart for me and get it all sent out. Because on the title screen it says it was made by someone named Disco, which I have no idea who that is. But yeah, essentially it's just a Famicom game we never got, with the sprites altered to have Metal Jesus throwing out power notes, and then they changed some of the sprites of things, so you have CDs and cassettes coming at you, but then some of the other sprites they just didn't touch. And this is brutally hard. Playing it today with the controller that allowed me to put Turbo Fire on it at least got me farther in it than I ever have, but I've never gotten past stage 1. I haven't put in that much effort either, but still. Fun hack, unfortunately, because of the brutality of the game, one-hit kills and you're done. Your sprite is so huge. I don't know if that's also not helping, because you get into these scenarios, especially with the shops that come up that shoot 3 lightning bolts, and then it's just every time that happened, I get screwed. But yeah, let me know if you've ever checked this out. Fun to have it, and also a fun kind of legacy of where I was in the channel. Because I always like looking back at my older videos and being like, oh yes, there's my fugue period. That's when I was watching the Game Chasers. That's when I was watching AVGN. Like this, obviously as a content creator, you get influenced by what you're watching, and you go through, especially early on, you go through spurts where you're really into one thing. Like I have an episode that's very much in the style of Game Chasers. I have an episode that's very much in the style of The Completionist. I have an episode that's basically a damn ripoff of AVGN, the Evo episode. So it's just cool. And yeah, this is what started it all. All right. And then another game. Now this one actually was a Riggs hack. So I bought this in Portland 2015 just because I always try to support people that I watch or that I like or that, interacted with me. Riggs has always been nice to me. I did a collaboration with him way back. And then I know he loved my Cobra Triangle video. One of the memes started on the channel way back in the day. Cobra Triangle. In Cobra We Trust. But a game called Hothead Joe. This is a very light hack from what I could see. It's probably another game. It looks like a Kunio Kunio game that we never got. And unfortunately, I got trapped in it. I got to I'm guessing the second stage, and there was a pillar I couldn't traverse. And I don't know if there's a button I'm missing, or if there's a prompt I'm missing, but it wouldn't let me get past it. But still, cool, I guess. Another game I got trapped in, which is funny. I guess that just happens to go with Metal Jesus characters, because I also picked up a copy of Radical Reggie, which I really wanted because this was before everyone and their mother was doing colored cartridges, and this was a purple cartridge, as well as I love Reggie. They have such great chemistry together. Their pickup videos to this day are some of my favorites. And so I wanted to pick this up and support them. And unfortunately, I got to stage 2 in this game as well and got myself trapped. And what's funny is I've had this footage of me playing this game for years, and I've never done anything with it. It's under a file called Unfinished Projects, which I don't have many. I generally find something to do with a lot of the footage I take, or a lot of the things I start. Another game, this is a Famicom game we never got, and it was a solid, little platformer. Nothing too special, but just the novelty and the sprite, the sprite work was interesting, but getting to the second stage and just having no damn clue what the hell to do, unfortunately had to put it down. All right, now these ones right here are pretty damn cool. So I found out about these, I think because I was looking into the AVS or something when it was announced in 2015-ish, and that is the 8-Bit Christmas series. Now, I have 8-Bit Christmas 15, I have 8-Bit Christmas 16, and then I got 8-Bit Christmas 17. And then I think they stopped for a couple of years. Now, the 17 one was supposedly really cool because you'll notice it doesn't have a label, it has an LED screen. Now, I had never actually put this thing in until today. Turns out, this game actually has every single 8-Bit Christmas from 2008 all the way to 2016. And what's cool is that the label will transfer to the label that's on it as you scroll through it. And it's not just that. There's lights, there's Christmas lights that pop on, so it's a really nice festive thing to have in the house. And once you select a game, though, then it just becomes that game. Even if you reset the cartridge or reset the console, you have to physically turn the dang thing off and then turn it back on in order to get to the game select again. And each one of these is different. And then years later, because I've still wanted to get the other ones, I didn't even know that this one was on it, but I picked up 8-Bit Christmas 14. And 8-Bit Christmas 14 is basically a Killer Queen 8-bit version versus 15 is kind of a platformer type thing where you go different levels. Another thing that feels almost like a predecessor to something like Micro Mages or Meat Boy-esque. And 16 is probably the worst one, which is just a pinball game. And I'm not a big fan of video pinball. But then this one has all the other ones. So that's pretty damn cool. I'm gonna have to check this out this Christmas because I was legit shocked. I did not know that I had the ability to play 2008 through 2016. And it just shows you the kind of, you collect this stuff, you pick it up, you buy it, and you never put it in. And maybe sometimes you should. All right. So another one goes back to 2015. So I believe this was the first official Homebrew, so not a hack, this is a homebrew that I played on the channel. And this really, so I knew about hacks, but I didn't know about people actually making new games for the NES. And so when I ran into the Retrotainment guys, Cash and Culture at Portland, and you'll notice that it says the Portland Retro Gaming Expo number 10. So this is Haunted Halloween 85. Now, a lot of people have covered this now. I covered this for Halloween in 2015. I had rave reviews for it. It is an excellent platforming beat 'em up type game. It's only 5 stages, I remember, and just a unique spin on the NES. Not the greatest music, some is better than others, but the controls are tight. There's only a few things that I found issues with when you were going down slopes. Sometimes your character would get stuck, but the amount of precision that's in the platforming and the feel of your character is almost Mario-esque, like later Marios. It's really, really solid, and I thoroughly love this game. You can tell how damaged your character is by looking at essentially their level of tan. So being tan in this game is a good thing, but you can get items to replenish your health. You can get serums that give you extra lives, and really it is not a very hard game, and something that I will always recommend. If you're looking for a good homebrew, this is a great game to look into. And it's also on Steam. It's also on other consoles, I believe, but awesome job those guys did. And after that, I was invested on anything else they did, which the next game they made was Haunted Halloween 86, that you're still playing as your lovely Pittsburgh Pirates guy, but now he has a friend in tow, and you can switch between the two of them by pushing a button combination, and I believe they each have their own different health bar. However, I will say I'm not as big a fan of this game as I am of the first one. I don't know what it is. I think the simplicity of 85 appeals to me more, even though 86 has a lot more going for it. I like the fact that the first one is just so simple. It's just punching and uppercut and jumping. 86, you get so many more abilities, so many more things, the character switch. And then unfortunately after 86, they stopped making these. There is no Halloween 87. So I know you can get either on a lot of platforms, and a lot of people would probably say 86 is better. I like 85 more. Now, they're both good, don't get me wrong. I still like both of them, but I would say 85 is where I would go. Now, the reason why there's no 87 is because in 2017, I want to say, they announced a Kickstarter for a new IP, a game that I didn't really know what the hell it was. It was a guy sitting in his cabin eating a sandwich, wearing an Al Borland shirt, and then he just wanders off into the woods. And that game was called Full Quiet. And this finally came out in 2022. I think it was supposed to be out in 2018-ish, and then it got delayed, and then COVID happened, and everything else. And so it took a while, but it finally came out. And, you know, I had an option to get the limited edition, which came in a silver cartridge, but I actually didn't like the box art, if you can believe it. I thought the box art on the standard edition looked better, and I wanted to have this cool neon green cartridge more than the silver cartridge. Which, who knows, if it's ever becomes something super expensive, maybe I'll regret it. But I don't know if this is on anything else other than the NES, and this was the first time I played it today, and I legit was pretty damn impressed with what they've done. Graphically, it uses some of that style of Haunted Halloween, but it adds parallax scrolling and movements. You have this open world essentially you're going through, and you can kind of just explore to your heart's content. One life is it. And then there's also a day-night system, it looks like, so it's telling you to camp before 2 a.m., which I wasn't able to find a campsite, but just all in all, very, very cool and interesting, and something I'd highly recommend checking out, and something I probably will plunk down and play here once the new game releases slow down, which doesn't seem to be happening with Tears of the Kingdom and then Final Fantasy 16 coming out, which I think I will pick up. I think I will pick that up. That looks very, very interesting for once, much more so than 15 or 13 or anything like that has for me. I played 13 on launch and it sucked. So hopefully I don't regret this decision. But Full Quiet, and also the Retrotainment guys in general, highly recommend anything they put out. It is very, very good and quality, and they're also nice guys too. Like I said, I met them at Portland 2015, and they've been nothing but kind to me. I think one of them even commented when I covered 85. All right, now another game I got from Pico Interactive, when I discovered Pico Interactive was this place that picked up old games that never got finished and buys the licensing and then either completes them or re-releases them or does that or that. And a game they had on it, which I'd never heard of, and I really have never heard of since, was Quest Forge by Order of Kings. And I opened this up to play this bad boy today. And it's not terrible, not great, little interesting. So you start off, you're just a knight outside a castle, and you can just wander off. Now, there is no attack per se. You hit the A button and you'll see a little, almost like a Secret of Mana charge bar, and it'll start high and then drop all the way down. And then if you run into enemies, you go into this automated combat where you attack, the enemy attacks, you attack, until one of you gets down to 0. And then if you lose one of your hearts. If the enemy loses, they die, and then you get some experience. And so it took me a little bit to figure out what the hell was going on. But then I discovered if you hit the A button to get your sword, the bar up, and if you run into the enemy while the bar is up, then you have more power. And then a lot of the times you could one-shot the enemy, or you can still win. Sometimes if you get the max, you'll do a crit and just knock things out. And then once you get enough experience, you can then level up the different abilities. Now, I don't know what they are. I think one gives you a heart back. I think there's an S and an L and a V. I'm sure, once again, I was trying to go through these things quickly. I wasn't trying to beat them. But enjoyable enough because that's how it worked. At least I understood how to do things, and it made sense. And I explored a bit. Couldn't really figure anything out. Found an underwater area that was much higher level than what I should have been doing, and promptly got me destroyed. And again, a one life, one everything, which I'm not a huge fan of, but what are you gonna do? But a pretty interesting game, and something that is worth checking out. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'm pretty happy with that game. I put off playing it for years because I was afraid it wasn't going to be great, but actually it was pretty damn decent. All right, now the next one is actually a game that was given to the channel, and unfortunately, it was a game I covered for the channel that the guy sent me. A really nice guy, a gentleman named Kevin Hanley. He made a game called The Incident, and I didn't care for it. I'm not a big block pushing puzzle game guy, and that's all this game is for 100 stages, and yeah, that's all I can say about it. I'm not a fan of these simple things, but huge respect for the gentleman making it, huge respect for sending me it. I still love having it. Excellent cartridge and everything. Nice, cool, kind of translucent gray, but unfortunately just not my type of game at all, and haven't played it since. But yeah, check it out. That's another one that's available on multiple platforms. Now, one that I do not have physically was a shocking game, and that was Anguna Scourge of the Goblin King. The reason that's shocking is that there's a Anguna game for the GBA that I got from Pico Interactive that was just awful. I hated it. And I even, when they were saying they were looking out for content creators to review the game on Twitter, I responded and said, yeah, I disliked the first game, but I checked this one out. And so they actually, to their credit, said, okay, here you go. And they sent me a code, and I gave it great review. I gave it, it was actually really solid. It repaired and fixed a lot of the issues I had with it on the GBA. It's another Zelda-esque type game. You still are slashing inward instead of outward, but it solves a lot of the problems I had, and was a fun enough time, and something that I am bummed I didn't buy a physical copy of. I know the gentleman I had talked to had said they were going to try to send me one, but I guess this didn't happen. I mean, I don't blame them. I wouldn't send it to me, please. No one watches this stuff. Except you guys. Thank you. But it was a fun game, and another one that's available digitally, and highly recommend checking that out. Similar to Quest Forge in a little bit. That's actually very much what I thought of when I turned on Quest Forge. Like, oh, this feels like Anguna, but well worth checking out. All right, the last game we're going to talk about is a 8-bit version of a game that came out that I didn't really know much about. I heard there was an 8-bit version coming of it, and I'm like, that's the game I want. I want to pick it up. And that is Alwa's Awakening. And this right here is how you do a homebrew right. Now, it's a little bit bigger than your standard homebrew, but I believe they completely redid everything for the NES release. And one of the coolest things about it is, and this is another one I opened up for today. I had not opened it up, and Retrobit did this packaging and everything, and Retrobit just knocks it out of the park with everything they do. I mean, look at this cool white cartridge. You can even see they have a picture of Alwa there translucent through it, I believe. And it feels like a side-scrolling platformer, almost in the vein of Simon's Quest or things of that nature. and just briefly playing it, getting through the green crystal dungeon, getting the ability to build blocks. You can go through towns. There's a save system that's fairly obvious where you light a torch and then you can start off from that area. And this one, probably more than anything I played today other than Full Quiet, has me stoked to go through and actually beat it. So let me know if that's something you guys be interested in. If you want me to cover any of these, go through and beat them. It's probably Full Quiet, the Owl's Awakening game, the Zelda Part 2, or Part 3 rather, just because I love Zelda 2. And then maybe the Quest Forge I was pretty impressed by. But yes, that's what we got today. A bunch of hacks, a bunch of homebrews. Definitely some games I would recommend checking out. So unfortunately, your backlogs have just gotten bigger. But hey, thanks for checking it out. That's all you get for this week, guys. As a reminder, I release a new video every Tuesday. I just want to thank you all the new subscribers. I've had better growth this year than I've had in any year I can think of in the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, after doing this for 8 years and really just feeling like you're treading water, getting any sort of momentum really does help. So your guys' comments, the new people on Patreon, everyone, I just want to say thank you guys so much. You really do make doing this so much more enjoyable when I have people that are checking it out. And I look at my analytics all the time, and it's great too because I see people finding these videos I made years ago. I'll see a video, I'm like, oh wow, someone discovered the Legion video I made, or someone saw the video I did on the Happy Hippo Island, or just random stuff. Like I made a video on Horizon Chase Turbo, and that's what I was hoping for. I was hoping that people would find the channel and then be able to check out all essentially the backlog of games, especially because there's a lot of games out there, and I'm happy to talk about them. So yes, thank you guys all for watching. Thank you for checking out the video. It's been so nice getting a hold of you. Take care.